BC women's basketball takes number 5 NC State to the limit, but can't finish them off. Jeff Hafley's philosophy on recruiting and the NIL deals. Is he doing the right thing? And Super Bowl talk as we head into Sunday's big game. All of this and more on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. I'm also the editor and publisher of bcbulletin.com. You can check out all my work over there on the site. All right, let's talk quickly about women's basketball. We're going to kick it off with the women who on Thursday had one of their best games of the season where they played number 5 NC State. They had leads throughout the game, but in the end, they weren't able to finish them off. Cam Schwartz led the Eagles with 24 points. Again, her shooting has come along such a great deal this year. She was electric through that first half. BC jumped out to a 23-12 lead. They looked in control, but when you play these better teams in women's basketball, you always have to be ready for them to punch back, because these are not the games where you could run away with it. And they have the talent on a team like NC State to really do what they do best, which is to beat you. And Diamond Johnson led NC State with 22 points. Taylor Soule had 16 points for the Eagles. So BC comes out to a lead. They're shooting well. They're really putting together their offense. They're looking good. NC State strikes back. They outscore BC in the second period to bring the score to a tie at halftime, and the tie comes when Allie Van Timmeren hits Cam Schwartz hits a 3-pointer going into halftime. So BC goes out the second half. They start playing from behind. Then they hit a shot with a second and a half left in the game to tie it up and send the game to overtime. When you get to overtime, that's when the real ballers come out, and that's what NC State did. They outscored BC 15-8 in that final period, and they take the win. It's hard. It's hard to get a real reaction to this, because on one hand, right, you want to feel happy for BC. When in this league, when you play a team that's 20-3, and they're the reigning ACC champions, they're one of the best teams in the country. They're, all the bracketologies has them in as a 1 seed. And you play them to overtime, you want to feel good about that. But there's that old adage that close doesn't count unless you're playing hand grenades or horseshoes. And that's kind of what this feels like, right? It's a gut punch. You were just there. You were so close to that monumental upset, and you couldn't finish it off. Joanna McNamee's team has been there. They have their good wins. Notre Dame's a very good win. They've had some in the years past, the run in the tournament. This would have been the cream of the crop for BC. This would have been that big win that the women team needed. They're out there in their pink jerseys for breast cancer awareness. The stadium was rocking. Every time they hit a play, it was a big deal. And you love to see. You just love to see Cam Schwartz and Taylor Soule out there just punching them in the face, metaphorically, of course. But you hate to see what happens. And it's such a negative feeling, but you just know it. When you're playing a team that's that good, you're just waiting for them to go on a run. And that's exactly what NC State did. They just, BC came out all guns blazing. And then NC State just rallied, and they held on, and it was close. BC looked like they were going to be able to kind of bring it back at the end. They hit some big shots at both ends of the halves. But, NC State, good teams win. And they figure out how to win. That's exactly what NC State did there. Hopefully BC can continue to build from this. Now, as I said on last episode after a game, the women's team, they're now 15-9. They're starting to play themselves out of NCAA consideration at this point. This team is good. They need some more signature wins. Like they have that at Notre Dame win, and they had a good streak there, but they're playing poorly. Not that they're playing poorly. They're just racking up losses. Losses, excuse me, and that's not helping. So BC needs to figure out how to get a few wins here if they're going to really start looking at going to the tournament. Now they've got some winnable games coming up. They play Pitt, they play Florida State, they play Wake Forest and Duke, and Syracuse, who they've beaten. So it's not like they're playing, NC State and some of those Murderer Rows Louisville, right? You have some winnable games here. Hopefully this is going to be some momentum building. Like, yes, it sucks that they lost, but maybe they learn, they get a little pep in their step that, like, hey, we can hang with the big dogs. We can do this. And so, Pitt's bad. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. They don't play them until Tuesday, so they got some time to rest. But Pitt is a team that they should be able to beat. And I think that get that win. You need those ACC wins, and you need to start piling them up. A nice 4-game win streak or 5-game win streak here would be just what the doctor ordered. So we'll have to see what happens with the women's basketball team. But I guess congratulations for, like, a good game. Again, I don't know what to say. Like, it stinks that they lost. You don't want to, like, congratulate them on losing, but it was a fun game to watch. Let's put it that way. And we'll just see where they go from there. In a moment, I want to talk about a question one of our readers had and listeners had about how Boston College is approaching the transfer portal, recruiting, and NIL deals. And we're going to talk about that all in just a minute. But if you are just listening to this podcast for the first time, if you are a first listener, I want to thank you. We are a daily Boston College podcast. We do this 5 days a week, every single day, talk about everything BC, from football, basketball, recruiting, hockey. We just talk about women's basketball. We'll talk about baseball, everything. If you like BC sports, this should be your first listen every morning. So make sure to like and subscribe to Locked On Boston College wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. The big game is this weekend. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game in a couple weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has the up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live, real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. Head on over to BetOnline, where the game starts. This is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black. I hope you guys had a great week. I mean, hopefully you got out there, enjoyed it. I mean, around Boston, we've had some nice weather the last couple of days. It's been around 50, no snow, love it. But let's talk about football. Football's in the rear view right now. We're getting almost into baseball season, softball season. I'm loving this talk of spring being right around the corner. I haven't even hit the ski slope this season yet, but that's what I'll be doing this weekend, but that's a whole other story. So football. Now, Jeff Hafley, as we've said on this podcast, says he's not going to live and die in the transfer portal. And what we've seen on almost want to call it the waiver wire, but the transfer portal wire, really indicates that that's kind of what he's doing. BC has 2 committed transfers this year. Regan Terry, a defensive lineman from Arizona, and Dino Tomlin, a wide receiver from Maryland and son of Mike Tomlin, a Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. So they really haven't done much. And as I've said on the past episodes, I always watch the transfer portal, and I try to make the connections of guys on the staff. Like, there's a ton of guys that have entered this year that have connected to Azar Abdul-Rahim, the Boston College's defensive backs coach. He's a very good recruiter in the D.C. area, so during his stops at Maryland, he was a main recruiter for a lot of guys that entered the transfer portal this year. But without fail, every single one of those guys, all those DMV guys, have not been connected to Boston College. They ended up someplace else. I saw probably like 2 or 3 St. Francis Academy guys, another school Boston College has a pretty good relationship with right now. I'm not sure how good it's going to be with the Jamal Hood thing, but that being said, they were not interested in them. So you see schools out there, right? You look at like Oklahoma and USC's a big one right now, LSU, that are building their roster basically from the transfer portal. I mean, USC, they have Michael Trigg, the tight end from Oklahoma. They have Caden Williams. They've added quite a few other names in there. So a reader, BC Eagle 74, asked, will Boston College adjust to this new system that really seems to favor the transfer portal? And I don't see that happening. I mean, yeah, certain teams have had big players come in and do things. I mean, Georgia themselves, though, team that won the national championship, and Alabama, for the most part, most of the guys on that roster, other than maybe like Henry To'oTo'o, and, I'm sure Georgia had a guy here or there that was a transfer. Most of those guys were homegrown. I mean, Stetson Bennett and Jordan Davis and Jameson Williams and, their quarterback, those guys all came locally. They were all guys that they recruited. So for every USC, there's a Notre Dame. Notre Dame has I think 2 commitments in the transfer portal too. So I don't think this paradigm has changed completely yet. Now there's teams that are getting guys, and I think Hafley has said what he said. He's not going to do that. And if you're expecting him to, you're in for a rude disappointment. I don't think he's BSing here. BC is not into the transfer portal right now. And 74 asked as well, like, he connected it with the NIL deals. I mean, if that's what you're basing what BC is going to be doing off of, good luck. I'm just going to say that right now. Like, yeah, Caleb Williams got a huge deal from Beats by Dre, but that's Caleb Williams. Boston College is not, and as much as many of you may wish, they are never going to be a team that is competing for those top recruits. Caleb Williams was the number 1 recruit via SI 99, their ranking system, in 2021 or 2020. The Boston College is never going to be in that. The Arch Mannings, the Trevor Lawrences, the DJ Uiagaleles, the Ewers, or all these guys, BC's never going to be that. They're never going to get that. So these NIL deals, that's all for the other teams that are doing all of that stuff. The Texas A&Ms, the USCs, the Oregons, the Ohio States. Those are the guys doing that. And they're doing it with recruits Boston College never had a chance with. And you may not want to hear that, but that's the truth of the matter at this point. Right now, there are there's a couple different games being played. If your expectation for Boston College is that they're going to compete for playoffs in a 4-playoff team system, you're in for disappointment. You have to, as I've said before in previous episodes, you have to set your expectations on what are some realistic things that they can do. Yeah, you want to see them go to a good bowl. You want to see them go to the New Year's Six Bowl. You want to see them maybe, win an ACC championship every now and then. Will they ever be a playoff team given where they are right now, where the whole system is right now? I mean, if that's what you're really going to set your standards on, you're going to be you're setting yourself up to be disappointed, first of all, because that's like saying, oh, I'm only watching BC basketball with the impression that they're going to be a Final Four team. Like, does that sound realistic to you? I don't think so. So you want to see them improve. You want to see them get to some different places, but they're not going to do it with Caleb Williams and that kind of stuff. It's just not going to, it's not where they're at. They're not a blue blood school. Those are blue blood schools that are now adjusting how they pay these players, because let's be honest, we all know before NIL, those schools were paying kids to pay. I mean, they're getting houses, their parents getting houses, jobs, they're getting cars. You see the pictures of guys 5 years ago before NIL coming out in Ferraris and big cars and all that stuff. They're not getting that through work study on campus. Let's put it that way. So I don't think things have changed all that much. Now, they'll legally be able to pay them, and, some of these deals are crazy. But I don't think that impacts Boston College, and I don't think they should really be focusing on any of that. I think I like what Jeff Hafley's doing. I like his system of developing his guys, getting his guy, really hitting the freshmen and the college freshmen. High school seniors, getting them up and developing in them in his system. And when there's a gap, when there's a position where you don't have enough talent to fill it right away, then you hit the transfer portal. He did it with the quarterback. He's done it with the tight end. He's done it with linebackers. And the hope is he'll eventually have more guys, but he's always going to hit a guy here or there on the transfer portal. He's just not going to get 7 or 8 guys. And honestly, is that a wrong thing to do? I mean, if there's a blue blood player that you could get on campus, you do it. And he's done that now 2 times with Jaden Woodby and Phil Dracovic, right? He brought those guys in. There was need. I mean, Woodby came in and he was obviously a blue blood player and took a starting spot from a guy that's been there for 4 years, Mike Palmer. So he's not going to not do it if it's there. But a lot of these guys, like, don't fall in love with the star system for the guys that are 4 years out. Sometimes those star systems are not right. And these kids are 4 stars that have been buried on a bench because they're not that good, or they're not adapting well to the college speed. So, you know, I would much rather him take the chance with the guys that he can develop that he thinks are going to work for his system, and then supplement them with the guys that fit or guys that are good that you're like, okay, he wants to come to Boston College, Jaden Woodby wants to come here, let's get him here. So just my thoughts on that. And it might not work, but I think Hafley is doing the right thing because, as I said before, those schools that are going bonkers adding in all of those transfers don't have the roster spots to add true freshmen. And so that's going to all trickle down to teams like Boston College, who will now be able to get higher quality freshmen because another school above them, you know, gave that slot away to a transfer. So you might see some, you know, really good recruits come to BC at some point too. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But, you know, this is year 3 of Hafley. Let's see how his roster development turns out in the next couple of years. In a moment, it's Super Bowl talk because it's Super Week, brought to you by Get Upside, and there's no better place to get coverage of the big game than Locked On NFL Podcast, Locked On NFL Bengals, and Locked On Rams. Check all of those out wherever you get your podcasts. This is time of the year that I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions. But not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not a resolution because I actually do enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't been, you're missing out on one of the best Built Bars and their best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're 100% covered in real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors: yummy, cinnamony, churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're so good. And they have so many great flavors. You gotta check them out. They have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. So go over to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off of your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. On Sunday is the big game. It's the Super Bowl. You know, I'm excited to see it because it's 2 teams I honestly don't really care all that much about. Like, I'm not a Rams fan and I'm not a Bengals fan. They're both cool stories. I like Joe Burrows. He seems like a fun player to get behind. And Jamar Chase is one of the, you know, the best wide receivers I've seen. And head over to betonline.net. I put a nice little sum of money on him winning the Offensive Rookie of the Year award, and I just cashed out on that on Friday night. So cha-ching. But let's look at the game itself. I mean, BC basketball is playing on Saturday against Duke. That should be a fun game, and hopefully Wendell Carter is okay because he just got his absolute bell rung on a cheap shot by Clemson on Thursday. But I wanted to talk football because I'm a huge NFL fan. I like watching football whenever it's on. And there's no bigger game than the Super Bowl, right? I don't know if anyone's having Super Bowl parties this year. I miss them. I saw a great thing about, you know, if you had $15, how would you spend it on food and drinks? And they did that whole like $5, $4. And I said $5 on beer, $5 on nachos, and put the $5 on the Rams. But there's no Boston College connection really this year. Wyatt Ray is playing, or he's on the roster. He was hurt, I think, for at least a couple of the playoff games. He's the 3rd string defensive end. So, you know, the Boston College fan in you might want to think for sake of having an Eagle win it all, that would be great. But I don't know. I don't know who I'm going to root for in this. I know using my betonline.net account, I have the Rams at -4. I just, in this game, the Bengals have done some crazy things. Obviously, beating Kansas City and outgunning Patrick Mahomes is quite the feat in itself, right? And Joe Burrow's, he's turning himself into one of those legends of like a guy that just can do anything when they need to. He's the comeback player of the year. He moves the pocket as well as anyone I've seen in college football, in NFL football. So I'm not ready to rule him out yet. But man, that Rams defense is going to be, they're going to feast on Cincinnati's terrible offensive line. And, as much as I love Joe Burrows, on that other side, Aaron Donald is one of the best defensive players I've ever seen in my life. Now, obviously, Lawrence Taylor was around when I first started watching football. He will probably be number one for the rest of my life. But Aaron Donald is right up there. The dude is a mauler on defense. And I think if you're a Cincinnati fan, you're going to have nightmares of what he could do to that Cincinnati offensive line. So you add in Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey, and a couple other really good defensive players, that defense could be really effective against Cincinnati. That being said, you never know what Joe Burrow is going to do, right? And then the Rams offense, Cooper Kupp, is, set all those records this year. You have him. You have Cam Akers coming back. I'm going to go with the Rams in this. And that's my pick. And I'm going to go with them by 7. I think they're going to win by a touchdown. So give me that. That's my bet. As many of you know, I'm a huge rap fan. If you've ever read my final thoughts and predictions, I really like hip hop. I am so pumped about the Super Bowl halftime show. There's been so many years I just couldn't care less. And this year, having Eminem, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Mary J. Blige, and Kendrick Lamar, that's like an all-star lineup. That's something I would love to see. So I can't wait for that. And my last thought on the Super Bowl is just thinking ahead. I always, again, go back to that Boston College lens again. Who will be the next Boston College player to win the Super Bowl? I already said I don't think the Bengals are going to win, so I'm not going to rule. I'm going to rule Wyatt Ray out of this one. My pick, unless some guys change around next year, and we saw John Johnson go to the Browns last year, and you never know where Zion Johnson could end up, or another guy in the draft. Like right now, if I was to pick right now, the guy for next year that would be my favorite would actually be 2. If Tommy Sweeney's still on the Bills roster and Matt Milano. I still think the Bills are building something there. I think another year with Josh Allen and maybe adding a few more pieces to that offense, give me the Bills. I think Matt Milano will be the next BC player to win a Super Bowl championship. So enjoy the Super Bowl. I hope you guys get to have some time with some friends. Enjoy a nice draft or eat some really nice buffalo wings if that's your style. But enjoy. So I'll be back on Monday. We'll talk about the Duke and Boston College game, BC men's hockey. We'll see if they can end their slide. I mean, they're playing UConn tonight. We'll see if they can figure that out. And we'll talk about everything in between. This is AJ Black. You can follow me on Twitter at AJBlack_BC. Please follow us on YouTube and check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend, everyone. I am hitting the ski slopes. I'll see you all again soon. Take care.